I'll just tell you how it is, straight talking, what it's like to be a spread, running a plastering business, the ups, the downs, how can we make improvements, how can we earn more money. But I'm not going to tell you that it's all sunshine and roses, because it isn't, is it? What do you need to do when you start working for yourself? Like just a handful of basics. Because I think most of us jump into the river with both feet, don't we, when we first go self-employed, and we don't really plan or think about what we're going to do. And I'm speaking for myself, but speaking to other self-employed spreads, the story seems to be the same with a lot of us, where we get a van, we get a bunch of tools, and we just sort of jump in and we go self-employed. But our focus is on let's just get some work, and we'll figure out the rest as we go. Again, I'm speaking for myself, but the more plasterers that I speak to over the years, and there's 7,000 of us now on here, even more on the other platforms, and it's the same narrative over and over again. You just sort of jump into it with no real roadmap, really, because there isn't really a roadmap for the self-employed plasterer or tradesman to sort of give us a few obvious basics that we need to get locked in. And I suppose the first one would be the legal stuff, those boxes that we need to tick. And sometimes we can even overlook this stuff, and we start working for ourselves, and we haven't really given much thought into the actual legal side of it, and the insurance side of it, and the registration side of it, and the tax side of it. So I'm gonna, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a financial guru or anything like that, but I can give you a helicopter view and a few tips of what you guys need to actually get done and get ticked off before you start working in people's houses, guys. So I'll jump on the chat in a minute, because I can see that's pretty busy there on the community group, and I've got both groups running at the minute as well, guys. So forgive me if I get a little bit if I drop the plates, so to speak, because I've not streamed into multiple platforms for a long time now. I normally just live stream into the coaching group, but the reason that I'm streaming into Trowel Talk community today is because, number one, I want to start doing more of this. And yesterday I named this live session Path to Profit. And the reason that I wanted to come and do a live stream in here today is because the topic is newly self-employed plasterers and giving them some tips, because I've got a bunch of them inside the coaching group, and 2 of them have asked me within the last 10 days, I've just gone self-employed, or I'm working for somebody else and I'm just on the cusp, I'm on the fence. I might go self-employed, but I might give it another year. I'm not sure whether to go for it yet. And have you got any tips and strategies for me for when I do go self-employed? Like, what's the best pathway to take? So that's who this live stream's for this morning, guys. It's for people that are either just gone self-employed, or they're thinking about going self-employed, or you might have been self-employed for a couple of years or a number of years, but you might just be struggling, struggling with the basics, like converting leads and getting enough work in. A couple of basics that we all struggle with, especially this time of year. So this live stream might help you, even if you've been in the game a long time and you just maybe you want a different perspective. Maybe you want to change lanes in your business and tap a different product and material. Cork sole, for example, is big at the minute. You might want to go rendering. You might want to go and get trained up on rendering. So I can point you in the right direction for the the specialists that are doing this kind of stuff. So by all means, join the chat and get involved. I know it's early. I had a few grumbles on the group yesterday and a few direct messages. What are you doing it so early for? Well, guys, the early bird catches the worm, and this is my free time that I've got. And I normally do this in evenings, but I'm sure the chat's busy at the minute, so I'm sure a lot of you will still be on the tools, and it is a Saturday, so we'll come on to that. I know we all get caught out sometimes. Like, I've done a couple Saturdays this year, and I'm always preaching to the boys to stop working Saturdays, but I know how hard it is, and I know sometimes jobs run over, deadlines have to be hit, targets have to be hit, the money has to be gotten, So I fully get that some lads are going to still be working weekends. Sometimes they'll be working Saturdays and Sundays. It's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. And my target is the 4-day work week. That's the target, but I don't always hit that target. And one thing that makes me a little bit different from other mentors, coaches, gurus, whatever you want to call them, is I don't bullshit you. I don't pretend that I live this amazing lifestyle and I'm a millionaire and everything's perfect. I've got a 6-pack and all this bollocks. I'll just tell you how it is, straight talking, what it's like to be a spread, running a plastering business, the ups, the downs, how can we make improvements, how can we earn more money. But I'm not going to tell you that it's all sunshine and roses, because it isn't, is it? So yes, we are going to still be working the odd weekend, and that's just the way that it is when you're self-employed. But if we have a target and a goal of reducing those weekends down and trying to hit a 4-day work week, and when I say a 4-day work week, by the way, I'm talking about 4 days intensive on the tools and using your Friday to focus heavily on your business and your marketing and your admin. All the stuff that we have to get done in our businesses that we try to shoehorn in, either evenings, weekends, or bank holidays. The time that we should be devoting to our families and our hobbies and interests, our business sort of dominates into our personal lives, and it can take over your entire life. And I've done chats on this many a time before, so I won't go down that rabbit hole this morning. But like I say, I've got 5 key tips for you, and some of you might have seen a video that I bashed onto TikTok the other day, and it covers these 5 tips in like 7 minutes. But what I want to do this morning is just peel back the layers of the onion a little bit more, and maybe explore each tip in more depth, and obviously get your feedback as well for those of you that are up early and you've hit the chat. So like I say, tip number 1, guys, is going to be just covering a couple basics on the legal stuff that you need to get done before you launch and go self-employed, start working in people's homes or working on site. So I'm gonna have a slurp of coffee and we'll see if anybody's up and at it. Oh, I need that caffeine this morning. Late night last night, we watched Aliens Romulus with the kids last night, which was quite disturbing and freaky. So I've got that on the brain this morning. But how is everybody anyway? How's everyone doing? What's everyone been on with this week? You've been inside, you've been outside. Have you been doing your admin? What have you been up to? Right. Good morning, Darren. How you doing, pal? You okay? Good morning, Dan Bunce. Good morning, Colin Price. Good morning, Alex Linnett. I'll just give a couple shouts out while I'm here. Lee Fury's just jumped on. Hope you're keeping well, Lee. Good morning, Mark Neeson. Cookie's on. Good morning, Cookie. We'll have a chat after this, mate. I'm going to be having a video chat with Joel Cook as soon as this ends, and we've got some ideas we want to bounce off each other. And Cookie's just had a rebrand and a relaunch, which is exciting. I'll mention some of his rendering training programs a bit later on, guys, as well, for those of you that want to skill up on the external render. Cookie's the man to talk to. Good morning, Will Standard. This one will help you out, mate, this morning, hopefully. Chris North is on. Ewan's on. Richie Brooks is on. Yeah, so it's busy, which is great. John Jameson, good morning. Good morning, Rob. Yeah, cheers, guys. Thanks for getting involved and watching. Yes, hi, Josh, mate. And hi to Mark Davis. Right. When it comes to the legal side of it, boys, like I say, if you're about to go self-employed and you want to be a self-employed plasterer, okay, let's get legal before we get carried away. And the last thing we want to be doing is getting tripped up, knocking over the customer's 50-inch plasma and then realising, oh shit, I haven't got any, public liability insurance in place. The last thing we want to be doing is, loading up the van with a load of rubble bags and then getting pulled over on a spot check and realising I haven't got a waste carrier's licence in place. So what we don't want to smack hand, and we don't want to be getting into, you know, trouble in any way. And look, we all drop the balls, don't we? You know, I've had times where I've realised my insurance policies have you know, run out, and I've had to quickly go online and, you know, renew them. But those are a couple of basic things. So look, public liability insurance. Okay, get yourself registered with HMRC, and these things are easy to do. You know, jump online and tick a few boxes and get them set up before we get going, before we start working in people's homes. The waste carrier's license isn't very expensive. I will drop some links in for you in the comment section once this live stream finishes, or if anybody has got any to hand, any lads from the coaching group, if you've got those links to hand, by all means bash them into the comments here for the best priced, you know, public liability insurance, business insurance. You could think about maybe getting your tools insured, and again, if you do plan on carrying waste in your vans, make sure you've got your waste carrier's license. So just a couple of obvious things that we need to get sorted there, guys, before we get going. Get yourself registered and get a good accountant as well. I know that a lot of the tax returns now, people are doing it themselves because it's it's a lot easier now with the cloud-based software. And there's like tax apps and stuff we can use where we, you know, it sort of walks you through it on a simplistic level, and you can just tick a few boxes. But my advice would be to get yourself a chartered accountant from day one, because their job is to keep you out of trouble and keep you advised. And ultimately, it's to save you money, isn't it? So that's their job. You know, they're the experts, and this is a world in itself, the whole tax thing. You know, like I say, I know a few boys that do it themselves online. They seem to get on fine. But my advice, let's stick to what we know, which is, you know, the actual plastering side of it. And of course, working on your business, you're going to be busy enough doing all that. The last thing you want to do is then go down that rabbit hole of trying to work out how much tax we owe and stuff like that. So get yourself an accountant. So those are my 3 tips for the legal side of it, guys. And obviously, you know, if you are going to be driving about in a van, make sure your insurance policies, you know, not expired, and the basic stuff. Just make sure whatever we're doing in people's homes, we're covered. We're covered legally. And I'm sure that the boys on the chat right now could probably drop in a story or a comment of times where, you know, things have gone wrong because they haven't been covered. You know, with things like public liability insurance, employers liability, you know, is another one. And if you're brand new to self-employment, the chances are you're not going to be needing employers liability, but you might do one day. So, you know, looking into the future, if you plan to scale, which I know is still a very attractive business model for plasterers, and I'm not dead against scaling. In the coaching program, we focus on a different way that you can earn money and get your profits up that doesn't involve scaling and taking on lads. But by all means, if that's something you want to do, you know, creating jobs for people is fantastic and positive, and the economy needs it. So I'm all for creating jobs. But if you're going to go and create jobs, make sure you create a proper job where you're giving them, you know, benefits and you being a responsible employer, and it's a win-win for everybody involved. And it's not you burning yourself out like a mouse on the wheel, hardly earning any profits, and basically keeping everybody else happy, paying everybody else, and you know, you're last in line and suffering, because that sounds a bit like a negative view on it all. But unfortunately, most of the plasterers that I speak to that have scaled, you know, they're running around like headless chickens, busy, and their whole focus is on getting the work in to keep the boys busy. That's their entire focus. I've got to get the work in to keep everybody busy. And this is the trap I fell into. Cookies fell into this trap before. And we do it for freedom. Like, you know, ultimately we go self-employed and we create these businesses because we want freedom. We want to earn good money. We want to, you know, break out of this, limited mindset that maybe we've been working for somebody else and we've hit a wall of what we can earn, and we think, well, the only way we can earn big money is by employing people and building a big team. It's one way you can earn good money, but in order to do that, your skill set, your business acumen has to be like level 100. You've got to be you've got to have your fingers in a lot of pies if you're going to go down that route. So, but we'll talk about it and we'll come on to it. In fact, I've got a sexy slide that I want to pull on the screen where we're gonna talk about business model, because that's tip number 2, guys, for people that want to go self-employed. And this might be coming from a little bit of a different perspective for you as well, and what you're used to hearing and seeing. I've tried to simplify it because I don't know about you, but I need things explained to me like I'm a 3-year-old. And sometimes a lot of this, when I talk to my accountant, for example, every year, I'm staring at him and just, drooling, because I don't know what the fuck he's talking about half the time. And sometimes we need stuff broken down into easy to understand language. And I've tried to do this on the coaching program as well. So, when you watch the training videos, you get it and you think, actually, I get this stuff now. I get this marketing and Google stuff now, because it's explained it in a way that I'm getting, and I can do this using my smartphone. So let's try and keep it simple is my approach. But the business models, guys, I've broken them down here into 3 categories, and you let me know if any of this resonates. And the boys that have, maybe in business for a number of years, let me know what your thoughts are on these models too. Because people like Lee Fury, he's been in the game many, many years, and he has scaled and he has built a big team, and he's gone up and down and left and right, and he's took his business in a lot of different directions. He does well. So he might be able to give you perceptions from, say, like the manager's perception, being a manager of people and being a leader of people and things like that, and the pressures and stresses, and also the positive side of it as well. So we can get some balance, maybe from the chat as well, and a contrast on what I'm saying, which I'm all for. I'm all for ideas and input. The systems that I'm going to talk to you about work, and they work for me and they work for the members in the coaching group as well. But this is an interactive chat, guys. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I'm saying too, by all means. So choosing the right business model, we've got the freelancer, right? We've got the manager, and then we've got the specialist. And what do I mean by that? So we'll talk about the freelancer. Okay, so if you're going to go self-employed, the chances are you're probably going to want to be a domestic plasterer. That's the most attractive role, I think, that we all go for, because we've got the flexibility there. Some people go self-employed and they go straight into subbing, and they remain as a subcontractor. But most of us, when we think about going self-employed and working for ourselves, our vision is we've got not the name on the side of the van, and we're doing our own jobs. We've got our own customer base, which is, like I say, it's very, very appealing, isn't it? So let's talk about the freelance model, because the lads that have messaged me saying I'm going to go work for myself, have you got any tips? What can I do? This is the idea that they have. They want their name on the side of the van and doing their own jobs on their own terms, which again we go deep into in the coaching group. But let's unpack it a little bit now. Pros and cons of the freelancer. You can pick and choose your jobs. You've got flexible working hours. It's highly rewarding. So you're taking a home that's, on its arse, back to brick, or the plaster's shot to bits. And by the time you're finished, you've completely transformed that customer's home. You've left the walls like glass. It's immaculate, and it looks like a home again, doesn't it? You've took it from a building site to a home, and that's really, really satisfying and rewarding. There's so many people that want to become plasterers and enter the plastering game, because it's fascinating to watch, you know, and that's why these videos are so popular on TikTok and YouTube. People just spreading plaster all day because you could watch it all day, and it's, you know, it's magical, isn't it? So, well, maybe not to us, you know, when we've got tennis elbow and the trapezius is playing up, and you've been in the game 20 years, it might not be magical anymore. But think back to when you were an apprentice, or, you know, a young lad, and you were watching the master craftsman laying on and polishing up. It is a bit magical. So it's appealing. It's, you know, taking a shithole and leaving it in a pristine, immaculate condition for the customer and say, there you are, it's ready for you to roll paint and fit your kitchen. You know, it's amazing. And I still get a buzz now when I finish plastering out a room or a home. And that's the reason I become a spread. You know, that was the appeal. And it's high skill as well. You know, being able to use a straight edge and use the trowel properly is very, very skilled work. So we do get a sense of pride and a sense of satisfaction within our work. Let's just get rid of that snooze. So yeah, you know, it is a rewarding job, isn't it? Working as a domestic plasterer. Low running costs. So our overheads are absolute minimal, aren't they? As a self-employed plasterer. I was talking to Chris Frediani on Fixed Radio a couple of weeks back about starting a plastering business, and he asked me, would you start a plastering business again? I said, yeah, damn right I would. Because you don't need hardly any kit. That's what's so exciting about it. You know, within 500 quid, say, you can get yourself kitted out, the back of your van kitted out with some cheap equipment, and you can get going and get started. And that's what's so exciting. It's 90% skill. Everything's you know, you're getting paid for these, aren't you? It's all in the hands. So if you do want to go and start a plastering business, guys, you're not going to need much in the way of equipment when you go self-employed. And the lads that are ready to go self-employed, the likelihood is you've probably done what me and Joel and everybody else did, which is work for somebody else, and over the weekends build up your own work. So you do a bit of moonlighting. When you get paid, you might buy yourself a couple of new tools, and that goes on for a number of years. So you can acquire the tools and equipment while you're working for somebody else, and then, you know, when the time's right, you can take the leap. But plaster mixers these days, you can pick up a cheap mixer for 100 quid or less, you know, and as long as you've got a good trowel, don't skimp on the trowel. Look, I'm not here to tell you what tools to buy and what equipment you need to go self-employed. You've probably already got everything you need in the way of tools and equipment. But of course, if you haven't, make sure you have got the little margin trowels. Make sure you have got a Ragney corner trowel. Make sure you have got a decent feather edge. Make sure you have got a reliable mixer and a backup mixer, because if that burns out halfway through a set, you're going to need to, you know, you're going to need to finish that mix, and you don't want to be getting the podger out, do you? You probably don't know what one of them is. But listen, get a backup mixer, even if it's just a cheap thing from Aldi. Get yourself a backup mixer, or at least a backup paddle, so you can smash it into the combi and finish off that mix. So a couple of obvious things like that may or may not help you out. These might be obvious things to some of the boys that are ready to go self-employed. But yeah, just make sure you've got everything you need to do the job that you plan to do. And again, hit the chat, guys, and tell me what your thoughts are on what does a plasterer need in his arsenal. You know, for the newly self-employed lads, what does a spread need in the arsenal as a handful of basic tools that sometimes we might overlook, you know? So hit the chat, guys, and let us know and get involved. But there's low running costs. So these are the pros of working as a freelancer in the domestic market, guys. Low running costs, yeah? Now, what are the cons? Risk of burnout due to a heavy workload. You're doing everything on your own. Now, this will depend heavily on what type of jobs that you actually take on and tackle. If you're going to be doing a big gable end with sand and cement on your own, that's going to burn you out, isn't it? So depending on what kind of jobs that you actually take on will depend on the workload and how much risk there is of burnout. But what I see a lot on the community group is plasterers taking on way too much on their own, trying to work to a deadline that's unreasonable and unreachable, and they literally burn themselves out from 6 a.m. through to 6 p.m. sometimes, 7 p.m. sometimes. They'll bomb through all their weekends because they're getting pressure from the customer. Oh, we need to be in, the kitchen fitter's coming. When's this room going to be done? This is when I talk to you about our business taking over our life. This is kind of how it happens by accident, because we're piggy in the middle on these renovations. We tend to get all the pressure to get the rooms ready for fit out, ready for decoration, ready for the carpenter, ready for the kitchen fitter, ready for the bathroom fitter. And it's that pressure all the time, pressure. And sometimes if we've got the habit of just nodding and saying yes to everybody, and we're a bit of a yes man, and we don't know how to set boundaries with people and tell them, listen, back off, I'm doing my best, but I've also got a young family. I need to be finished by 5 and I can't be working weekends. Sometimes that conversation can be a little bit difficult because we might be a people pleaser and we might not want the confrontation. But ultimately, and we're going to come on to mindset a bit later, but ultimately, guys, the mindset you need is you're in business, and it's a bit cliche, but there's no friends in business. You can be respectful, you can be courteous, you can be professional, but they're not your mate. Your customer isn't your mate. You don't owe them anything. And this is why it's so important to get everything in writing and your terms locked in. Include things like what time you're going to be starting and finishing. Let them know from the get-go you're not going to be doing Saturdays, stuff like that. So, when that conversation comes up, at least you can refer back and say, if you refer back to section 3 in our terms, Mrs. Smith, you'll see that, we don't work weekends. I'm sorry. This is another conversation, but the reason that we get burned out as plasterers is because we're taking too much on our own. And, if you do decide to build a team around you, that would be a really smart idea if the size of your projects require more than one man. So instead of you burning yourself out like trying to be Rambo, do it all on your own, maybe you do need a labourer. Maybe it's time, you do need to think about taking on an apprentice if the size of the projects require more hands and more manpower. Now, having said that, guys, I mentioned Joel Cook earlier, and he's doing render training, right? Now, he decided to scale down and buy a machine. And that's a really, really smart option, because now he doesn't need men there. He needs, the machine is doing the job of the man, and it's doing all the heavy lifting for him. So now he's just focusing on skill. So in 2024, 2025, maybe you don't need a team of lads. Maybe you need to think about investing in some of this technology that we've got available to us. And inside we can spray plaster inside as well, which I know a handful of you are specialising in, the airless gear. So I'm not saying go and hire, 5 lads, go and employ staff. What I'm saying is, let's look at the type of jobs that you're planning to do. And if those jobs require more hands, then either get more hands or target different jobs. If you don't want to hire staff, then target different jobs. And this is what I do, guys. I specialise in projects that doesn't need staff, but I can still earn high profit. I'll give you an example. Bay windows. Insulating, stripping out, insulating and skimming bay windows. Big money. I can do them on my own in a day or two. They're not too rough on the shoulders. And these are small projects, high profit projects. Another one's chimney breasts. Just to reel off a couple for you, give you some ideas. Chimney breasts. Fixing the damp on chimney breasts. A little chimney breast is different to chucking on a gable, isn't it? And needing the push. So it's just food for thought. The type of jobs that you target will determine if you need a hand or not. But again, the burnout thing, and I'm passionate about it because I've been burned out. I've took on jobs that I shouldn't have took on, and didn't get the help at the time. We do get precious about our business, and we do get worried about bringing in other plasterers sometimes, and we do take on a bit too much and work too many hours. And again, when you're using your body to earn money, which is what we do as plasterers, we're using our shoulders and elbows to earn money. They can wear out and it hurts. So have a think about it. Your business can be unsellable if you're a sole trader, freelancer. Okay, your business is unsellable. Now, the percentage of plasterers that start a business, scale it, and then step out of the business and go and sell it, you never hear of them. And I'm not saying there isn't any of them on Trowel Talk, although I don't think there is any out of the 7,000. But what I'm saying is, it's a very rare entrepreneurial person, a very driven, motivated, ambitious, entrepreneurial kind of person that is going to go and build a massive business with everything needed to do that, right? And then be able to go and sell it for millions of pounds and go, there you go. Charlie Mullins is only one of them for a reason, because this is fucking hard work, is what I'm saying. So if you've got a fantasy, if you want to go self-employed, right, and you're thinking, I'm going to be like Charlie Mullins, I'm going to go and build a massive empire, and then one day I'll step out of the business and sell it for millions of pounds, the chances are that ain't going to happen, unfortunately. And I'm not here to be pessimist and be negative about scaling or anything like that, but I'm trying to give you realistic, real world insights. And I've been at it 20 years now, and by all means, don't just listen to me, listen to 10 other seasoned, experienced plasterers that are doing content as well, and get their perception. But it's a very rare thing to be able to build, scale and sell a large plastering business, especially if we don't even know what our business works, how marketing works, how scaling works, especially if we don't know anything like this, and we just think hard work will make it happen. Guys, it's a fantasy, and it's a trap we all fall into. So if you're going to go into business and become self-employed, do it for the right reasons, and expect to be on the tools for a long time, and expect to be grafting and sweating and busting your bollocks for a long time, decades. Okay, because that's what's going to be involved. You're going to be covered in sweat and dust for years, and there's a very rewarding side of it. But this model that I'm going to come on to, the manager model, I feel it's for a select few. That have the capabilities and that entrepreneurial spark and that drive, and who's willing to make that sacrifice, personal sacrifices, to be able to do this. And sometimes I feel that the narrative gets pushed that anybody can just go and scale a big business and sell it for millions of pounds. It's a bit, take it with a pinch of salt when you see that, because the chances are, even if you do scale, you're going to have a small handful of lads, and it's going to be you leading and driving them lads from the front. You lead from the front by example. So it's going to be you driving and leading that business. So just have a think about that. If you're going to go self-employed and working as a spread, expect to roll your sleeves up and be getting dirty year in and year out, because that's what's going to be necessary, guys, to make it happen and make it work. So it's unsellable if you're working as a sole trader, freelancer, plasterer. You've got limited earnings, because obviously if you're focusing on bread and butter work, and maybe you're still doing a lot of work for builders, etc., then you're going to max out of what you can earn. And we worked out that a plasterer might have, say, 200 good days. When you factor in how much it's rained this year, for example, probably not the best year to use as an example. But let's say we have 200 good days when we take out all of our holidays, our sick days, our weekends, etc. If you're working on a day rate situation at 200 a day, then you're going to cap out, aren't you, at your 40 grand or whatever it is, 30 odd grand. So depending on the type of jobs that you target, and we'll come on to the specialist model, depending on the type of jobs that you target, you're going to sort of hit a ceiling of what you can earn if you limit yourself to a fixed day rate situation. So think about that moving into the future. And obviously, whatever you earn, if you can keep busy, of course, it's going to be more than what you would earn as an employee, hopefully, still. But it's just food for thought. If you're going to go on a day rate situation, there's only a handful of days, a number of days we can do in a year. So think about that. Risk of injury. This goes without saying, and you know, all of these models have risk of injury because we're going to be on the tools ourselves and we're in the building trade, so there's risk of injury there. So I'm going to have a slurp of this coffee, hit the chat, maybe pop off a couple of comments that have come in, and then we'll move on to the manager. And we're already 20 past 8, so we'll have to keep it moving pretty quick. But if anything's resonating with you guys, then hit the chat and let me know what you think. And also, the guys that are going to go self-employed soon, what are your concerns and worries? If you're watching now and you're thinking, I do want to go self-employed, but I've got this burning question, smash it into the chat and maybe I can catch it live. Cookie says 100%, there's no friends in business. Will Stunnard, when you're at the stage of building up your work over the weekends and then you decided now's the time, I'm going to go for it, how did you approach it? Me personally, Will, I'm sort of, my approach to everything is burn your boats. It's sink or swim sort of attitude, which it works for me, but it might not work for everybody because that comes with a lot of pressure and stress as well. You're putting a demand on yourself, and if you're unfamiliar with what I mean when I say burn your boats, I can't remember who it was now, but the story goes an army wanted to invade this island, and the leader of this army burnt the soldiers' boats and says, well, you're not going home, you either take the island or die, because we've burned your boats, there's no escape, you know, there's no retreat, you have to make this work. So when I say burn your boats, that's what I did when I went self-employed. I just thought, right, because sometimes I feel we might be waiting for all the traffic lights to go green before we actually make the journey, if you know what I mean. And it's we could be sat there trying to analyse when's the best time for 5 years. You could be thinking, oh, not now, you know, the government's just said we're in a bit of a recession. Oh, not now. Labour's just released this budget and businesses are going to get wobbled a little bit. I'll give it another 6 months. And then, you know, you could spend all your life doing that, saying not now, it's not the right time now. So my advice to you is just do it now, you know, just get started, because you obviously want to do it because you know you're burning to do it and you want to. The thing is with being self-employed and being in business is you only get better at it once you're in it. So you only know how to start swimming when someone throws you in the water. You could sit there staring at the water and analysing it all you like. And people could say, oh, when you're in the water, do this and kick your legs. But until you're in it, you don't know how you're going to react. So what I'd say is jump in, get started, absorb all the information you can from all these resources around you. Trowel Talk, we've got Cookies Group. So absorb as much information as you can about the type of jobs that you want to do. And don't wait for all the traffic lights to go green, mate. When you feel the time's right, what would be handy is to have a few months' earnings in the bank. But is that going to be feasible? Are you going to be able to do that before you launch? Because not everybody can. You know, people have got mouths to feed, etc. So the time's right once you've got a lead generation system locked in. So a stupid thing to do would just be to go self-employed with no plan of how you're going to get work. And you just think, well, word of mouth. I'll just get word of mouth. You're not just going to get word of mouth in 2025, 2024, because the competition is fierce and everybody is clambering for those leads and inquiries. So we need to make sure that we're visible. So this will be covering your marketing side of things. So obviously your main focus is going to be keeping consistent flow of work coming in. And the way you do that is by getting visible. The strategy we use on the coaching program is Google, and we use a number of free platforms to get visible and to get people phoning us and sending us emails and inquiries. And it's a strategy that's extremely effective. If you go onto the coaching group now, which I know you will, I think you've just joined, you'll see the results that some of the boys are getting on the group. And Dan's just posted up in the last half an hour, I think, with another little win on a ceiling project that he's just managed to book in. But it's not BS, it's systems that work. Be prepared to roll your sleeves up, because it does take work, and it's not a quick overnight thing. Not like, check a trade where you give them the money and they give you people's phone numbers. It's something you have to build. So it's a reputation building process. And my advice to you, if you want to go self-employed, is put all your focus and attention on building your reputation and making that reputation as visible as you possibly can. But there's a lot to unpack on that question, mate, and we will come onto it more deeper inside the coaching group. But yeah, if you want to do it, try and get some money behind you, try and get a couple months wages behind you, and think about your lead generation. How am I going to generate leads consistently? Those are the two boxes we need to tick, because everything else is practical things. So I hope that helps, buddy. Joel just goes on to say there doesn't have to be enemies in business either. Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. So when we say there's no friends in business, we're not saying to make enemies with these customers. The idea is to keep it professional. Keep it professional. We don't owe anybody any favors. I think there's a fine line between high level of customer service and being taken for a ride and being taken advantage of. So we've got to keep that line in sight and make sure that line doesn't get crossed, really, I suppose. Right, let's move on to the manager then. So spoke about the freelancer model there, which is most of us will register as self-employed. We'll have a van, we'll have our tools, we'll start working in people's homes or working for builders as a freelance plasterer, doing bread and butter jobs. Might be bonding coat, hard wall, sand and cement, might be skimming out, re-skimming, replacing ceilings, bit of coving, a bit of this and a bit of that, all the bread and butter jobs. So we'll move on now to manager. Now this is where you start to scale. This is where you scale. And guys, I talk about this because this was me for over a decade in the manager. I call it the manager model because that's essentially the role that you take when you take on lads. You become a manager of people because it's your job to manage the lads. So that's why it's called the manager model. Now in this model, there is scope for growth and there is scope for more profit if done correctly and done right. So I spoke about the negative side of it earlier about how, most people that do try and scale, their profits, instead of their profits going up, their profits sort of level off. And the whole focus becomes about just keeping the lads in work instead of about their vision of what they want for their family and how much money they want and all the things that they want. It becomes too much about let's just keep the lads in work. And it's oftentimes when you're in this model, you're taking on jobs that you don't necessarily want to take on, but you have to take them on because you have to keep the lads busy. Whereas in the freelancer model, you can cherry pick your jobs. I don't like that guy, getting a bad vibe off him, something not right with him. I'm not going to go for it. Or that job there is too far away. Or that customer over there, he's trying to haggle me down on the price a bit too much. He can sod off. I'm not going to do it. So the freelance model, we can pick and choose who we work for and how we work, where we work. When you start scaling and taking on lads, that becomes more difficult because now you can't be as fussy and as finicky with who you work for because you've got to keep these guys in work. So we end up taking on jobs, shitty jobs that probably we wouldn't take on if we were, freelancing. So again, pros and cons to it. But we can take on larger projects there. So you can see here, I've bullet pointed, we can take on larger projects. You can't take on a block of flats on your own as a freelancer, whereas if you had a team, maybe you could. You can take on commercial projects if that's a line of work you want to go down. It can become a saleable asset if you scale. So, these are the pros of scaling. And like I say, I'm not all dead against it. However, I think to go down this road, I think you do have to be highly entrepreneurial, very business smart, and also really, really well connected. And maybe your personal situation, if you've got a couple of babies at home, for example, then the missus is going to need, she's going to need you by her side, isn't she? And this is the trap I fell into. I tried to scale while I had babies at home, and you can't have two passions, and oftentimes you'll hear lads talk about this, how, they wanted to scale, but it was costing them too much behind closed doors, and all their focus and attention was on the business and building the business and putting systems in and dealing with customers and dramas, and in the background people are getting left behind. So if you do decide to scale, think about that. Like, is this the right time to scale? Or, is this something I need to do when the kids are a bit older and, out on nappies? Think about it, because the amount of time and devotion that you're going to have to pour into this business in order to get it off the ground and take on a team of lads and all that's involved, you might find that it's going to require too much of you to do this. And although it can be, like I say, it can lure you in, especially if you scroll on TikTok and look at all the business coaching bullshit that goes on. People have this desire to do this, thinking that they're going to earn big money if they scale, but oftentimes they end up burning out and not earning the profits that they think they're going to earn. So, but look, let's talk about the pros. So I keep talking about the downside of it. You become part of a team, so the workload is shared. I spoke about how sometimes as sole traders, we might take on jobs that are just too big. They're just too big for us to handle as one man or one man and a labourer. Whereas, of course, if you're in a part of a team, you can take on anything. You can take on larger projects. But ultimately, we need to decide, like, is this larger project even worth taking on? And why am I taking it on? So we've got to be asking these questions all the time. Now, the cons, I've obviously listed a few already. Increased stress and higher costs. Increased stress, higher costs. So I mentioned there about being entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurial types are resilient against stress. They're very resilient against stress. It doesn't get to them the way it gets to most of us. So people that scale big businesses and take on big teams of lads and, they're spinning capital and, they might be owed in 30k, 40k, and they're still sleeping at night. And, the stress doesn't get to them the way it gets to most of us. So they have a high resilience to stress. If you haven't got a high resilience to stress, then you're going to suffer with stress big time. Because oftentimes you'll be pulled into other people's payment terms. Whereas if you're a freelance plasterer, you can set the terms up how you like. You can say, right, I want 50% down when I book this job in. And the day that I finish, I want the other 50%. Your terms, your business. And if they refuse, you say, I'm not working with you then. Simple as that. When you start building a big team and going down the commercial rabbit hole, that becomes more difficult to put those demands in and those commands in, because they're going to want you to be pulled into their payment terms. They might honour your payment terms, they might not, but it's going to be more difficult for you to set up your own payment terms in a commercial setting if you're doing large scale commercial jobs. And of course, if you need to keep them lads busy, you can't be a spoilt brat in the way you can as a freelancer. So increased stress, guys, less flexibility, and taking on jobs you don't really want. So I mentioned there, sometimes we have to just take on work just to keep people in work, basically, and we haven't really got the option. So that's the manager model, guys. And again, if you've got any thoughts on this, or you see things from a different perspective, or you want to put your opinion in, then by all means do hit the chat and let me know your thoughts on it. So the specialist model, guys, by now you'll probably understand what this model is. Kind of works like the freelancer. So you've got, you know, a lot of flexibility. You're working on your terms, choosing who you work for, where you work, how you work. A lot of flexibility there. The only difference from being a freelancer is it's high profit. It's high profit. So if we're bashing out, you know, reskims, for example, and we go and price up a job and say, you know, I want X amount for this reskim, we know that there's going to be a high competition. We're going to have a lot of competition, especially if you live in a city. One way you can get around that is by differentiating yourself and becoming better. Just become better than your competition, cleaner, more reliable, better at communicating, more professional. You got more customer reviews. You know, you look better, etc. You got, you know, your marketing's better, so you can stand out in that way, and you might be able to, you know, win over the customer and lose the competition. However, in a competitive market, it's going to be more and more difficult for a bread and butter plasterer, you know, to put a high price in when the customer has an easy option to just choose a lower price every time. So although we can become better and stand out, because it is so competitive, and again, more and more spreads are coming into the game, and I'm not here to bash the new guys coming in, but it is a market that's low entry barriers, easy to tap. There's many skimmers out there now that they might not have your skill set, and they might just be skimmers going over plasterboard. I'm not knocking the young lads, because I understand that they can't access the training that you could access when you were, you know, their age. They might not be able to access the mentors and the people that are willing to teach them how to use a straight edge. So I'm not knocking the young lads, but what I'm saying is plastering's become easier to tap. It's easier to tap the market. So in the reskimming market, I found when I was doing this years back, there were a lot of people willing to cut my price in half. And, you know, because like I say, you can pick up a van, a couple of buckets, cheap paddle mixer, you know, go and get a trowel from the range, and now I'm a plasterer. And, you know, if we've got people like this who have built a website, from the customer's perception, might not be very educated, you know, they're going to think, oh, Joe Bloggs over here is going to do it for half the money. And of course, we all know that story ends. But that's when it comes back down to educating your customers. So that's why it's so important to educate your customers with your content, so they can see the pitfalls. What happens if I go for a cheap plasterer that doesn't know what he's doing? What happens to the finish? And you can show them the finish delaminating. You can show them the risks of taking on a cheap job and taking on a cheap plasterer. So, but what I'm saying is, in a nutshell, guys, it's a competitive market. It's going to be harder for you to earn high profit in an extremely competitive market with low entry barriers. So that's why we can cap out on our earnings working as a freelance plasterer sometimes. The guys that have been in the game 20 years, that are highly established, and saying, oh, I'm busy 7 days a week, I charge 250 a day, and I'm busy 7 days a week. You've had 20 years of road to run on. And so we're talking about guys that are just coming in to the market, guys that are just coming into the market. With the specialist model, it's high profit. So we're focusing on jobs that are specialist. It might be thin coat render. It might be Venetian plastering. It might be internal wall insulation. Could be damp proofing. Could be modern render systems, EWI. If you can laser focus and niche your business down to one skill or one niche that's in demand, and you know, focus all of your attention and your marketing on this one niche, then you become known for this niche. People, you know, your name's dropped. People go, yeah, I know that guy. He specialises in internal wall insulation. Oh yeah, I know that guy. He specialises in external wall insulation, etc. And if you can get that sort of recognition and that authority, specialising and niching your business down in one specific skill, and you get your marketing right, which is a key component of doing this, of implementing this strategy. If you can do this and get this right, this is where you get your money up. And the competition is minimal. The competition is minimal now, because everybody's over here in the freelancer model, scratching around for the scraps. You're over here now, and you've lost a lot of the competition. So you're losing the crowd by moving over into the specialist model. Flexible hours, it's highly rewarding, low running costs. So pretty much on par with the freelancer model, but you're specialising now. Specialisation. You work less and you earn more. Work less, earn more. So going back to the bread and butter plastering jobs, typically be on a day rate situation. And the only way to get that day rate up is by doing more hours and more jobs. However, as a specialist, you can literally double your day rate. And I know that's quite a bold statement. You can double your average day rate. So let's say you're earning 200 quid over here, you can earn 400 quid over here. If you're earning 250 quid over here, you can earn £500 a day over here or more. So, and without having to work more hours, which is the more important thing. So what you're doing, guys, is you're leveraging your skills. You're leveraging your skills. Instead of competing, instead of putting your skills in a competitive framework where you're competing with everybody else, you're leveraging your skills. Okay, so you work less, you earn more. So you've got more freedom. Maybe you want to do a 3-day week, but you need 1,500 quid. And you think, well, I can't do a 3-day week because I need 1,500 quid. Now you can, because you can earn £500 a day over here in the specialist model. Okay, now this takes graft. Like I say, it's not a magic wand, overnight fix. It takes graft. It's going to take you a number of years to firmly position yourself as a specialist in the plastering market. Okay, it's going to take a lot of work, but when you do it and you get there, you'll reap the rewards, believe me. Now, there's scope for growth. Now, although you don't need to take on staff, right? Although you're not going to be taking on staff, because of the knowledge, because of the amount of potent knowledge that you're going to build up in this area here as a specialist, now you can start tapping other avenues. Like, let me give you an example. Look at Joel Cook, okay? He's become a specialist in ThinCo and modern render systems, and now moving into EWI. And that's what he does on the tools to put food on the table. But what he's also doing now is training other lads in how to do this, and how to, build your rendering business and how to become a specialist. So it's opened up more avenues and more doors by him specialising. So now he's creating other income streams and stuff like that. So the scope for growth in different ways. Growing your business isn't just, build a big, massive team and, have to be like the mouse on the wheel doing 60-hour work weeks. There's scope for growth in other ways when you go down the specialist model. You could be doing blog posts, you could be a guest speaker on podcasts, you could create a YouTube channel and have passive income that way. You could create your own podcast. There's multiple different ways that you can earn money in this specialist model there. It doesn't have to just be earning money being on the tools. You can earn money in loads of different ways, leveraging your knowledge and your skills in different ways. Now, of course, there are cons. It's an unsellable asset because you are the business. So unlike the manager model, a few people, like I said earlier, those entrepreneurial types, right? They might be able to build a large scale commercial plastering business or even a domestic plastering business. And one day they might be able to step out of that business, sell it on, hand the person the keys and reap the rewards of that sale. I'm not saying it's not doable. But over here in the specialist model, that would never happen because obviously it's just you on the tools. You are the specialist. Okay, so it's unsellable. And of course, again, I've mentioned their risk of injury. So I hope that information helps, guys, a little bit. talking about, you know, pros and cons of each. Well, let's come on to the skill sets needed. Working as a freelancer, if you want to go self-employed, you're ready to go self-employed, you're going to need people skills, you're going to need good work ethic, time management skills, cleanliness, and sales skills. Well, it goes without saying. So oftentimes we get good on the tools and we think, well, I'm good at plastering walls, I'll go and work for myself. And I'll be really, really busy because people keep telling me how great my work is and my work looks so great. But that's only one piece of the puzzle, because when you start working for yourself, you need all these other skills, guys. People skills, time management skills, marketing skills, sales skills. If we overlook this, don't matter how good you are on the tools and how nice your work looks, people aren't just going to knock your front door and give you work. So you have to be able to bang the drum and sell yourself, sell your business. You've got to become your own cheerleader. And if you want to scale, those skills have to be even more potent, and you've got to look at upskilling yourself even more. So I put here, leadership skills is what you'll need if you want to scale your plastering business. Okay, strategic thinking, like with your financial thinking, you've got to be very strategic. You need to be resilient. So you'd have to be very resilient to stress. For example, things going wrong. You know, managing a machine, if, you know, the cogs stop turning, let's change this part here, is different to managing people and dealing with their dramas and stress every day. You know, you have to become a counsellor at work and dealing with your lads and dealing with the stress that brings. People are unpredictable. You don't even have to going to turn up half the time. So one of the other challenges of being in this manager position here is the constant search for staff all the time. That can become overwhelming and stressful in itself, because you just about build your team and then someone fucks off and leaves. They might have been your lead man, your wing man, who you rely on, and now they've left. And this is what happened to me. When they leave, it throws a spanner in the works, and now you've got to find somebody else, and that can become exhausting sometimes. Trying to find the right people for your business is even if you've been in the game decades, it can still be the hardest challenge, finding the right people for your business. So you got to have a resilience there, financial skills, guys. What skills do you need to become a specialist? You need specialist skills and knowledge in a specific niche. You need advanced sales and marketing skills. And you need to have a focus, guys, on continuous training and developing yourself and your skills all the time. Over in the freelance model, the bread and butter plastering model, plasterers get stuck in that model because they've learned how to skim a wall and how to use a straight edge, and then they stop learning. They think, well, I've got my skills now. I don't need to learn anymore now. I've done my time at college. And then they get trapped because they might buy a house, get a car on tick, get a van on finance. So the whole focus is, let's keep getting these jobs skimming out people's houses, or, you know, doing K-rend or whatever it is. Let's keep getting these jobs in because we've got to pay the bills. So their focus goes off training, off learning, and that's why the coaching group's here. You know, it's to help you, give you easy access to training and knowledge and business skills, because I know how it is when you're in that position. You've got to feed the kids. You know, oftentimes we haven't got time to think about our future and think about upskilling our business and learning new skills and training. We just haven't got time or money. The money might not be there, which is why this runs at 80p a day, because I didn't have the money for business coaching. I'll be totally honest with you. I couldn't afford business coaching when I first started. And that's why I never got it, because I couldn't afford it. And it's unaffordable for most new plasterers. The average cost of a business coach is like £100 an hour or something daft like that. So oftentimes, guys, we can't afford business coaches. But it's so important that we do get business coaching. Otherwise, we'll never be able to push forward and move the needle. We'll become stuck in the freelancer mindset. So I hope that's given you guys a good sort of overview of what you can do when you go self-employed working as a plasterer in the UK, and the 3 different models that are used to try and explain it. But the key focus is going to be finding work when you go self-employed, guys, and getting the right mindset, getting the mindset right. When you work for somebody else is always responsible for things that go wrong. They're responsible for time management. They tell you when you can go and have a lunch break, etc. And I'm talking about people that, you know, they're on the books as an employee. You know, you know when you're supposed to turn up, you know when you're going to have your lunch, you know when you can switch off and clock off. And if things go wrong, you run out of materials, it's someone else's problem. When you go self-employed, you're taking on 100% responsibility for absolutely everything. So the buck stops with you now. And sometimes that can really wobble people when they're not used to it. They jump into self-employment, start taking on all this responsibility and pressure, and, you know, they throw the towel in because they've gone self-employed and increased their hand skills, but they haven't increased their mental mindset to be able to fit that leadership position, being self-employed. Everything's on you. So you've got to wear a lot of different hats when you go self-employed, guys. It's not just a case of, you know, turn up, slap some plaster on and put the invoice in. If you want to build a professional business and a professional brand in your local area where you live, it's going to take a mindset shift to do that, because you've got to learn these off the tools skills in your sales, your marketing, your communication. You need a kind of helicopter view of how each little component works in your business. There's a lot to it. So that's why the coaching program's there, to help you guys to learn that in an easy to understand format that's affordable. So consider coaching. And that was tip number 5, was consider some coaching. And if it's not Trowel Talk coaching, consider being coached by somebody else. But get some business coaching, guys, because it's so vital that we learn these skills and these points off the tools. So, and by the way, I've had 2 messages as well this week about Corksol again. If anybody does want to sign up to do a training day with Corksol, members of the coaching program get 30% off. That's a massive chunk. That's a couple of £100 in your back pocket. So listen, if you want to go and do the Corksol training, I'll put a link in to the coaching group below. And even if you want to stay in the coaching group like a month or a couple months, it's going to pay for itself tenfold, because it's 24 quid to join for the first month. And, you know, you're going to get a couple £100 off this training day, guys. So I'll put a link in there. And this is just, you know, I keep banging the Corksol drum, but this is just one material that's hit the market in the last couple of years that's changing the game in plastering. But there's many of them. There's loads of them. And I mentioned about doing a talk with Cookie at 9 a.m. Cookie's just rebranded to Pro Render, and he's got like training days that are going for like a couple £100, where you can go and learn Joel's strategies and his methods of how he earns money and how he, you know, targets these brilliant render jobs in Leeds. And he's giving all that information away on a training day, a one-to-one training day. Bite his hand off, go and do it. If you're still, you know, messing around with sand and cement like I was for years, and you've got all these pre-bag renders available at your merchants, and you're thinking, oh no, I don't know how to do that, I'll just stick with sand and cement. Or you might be a skimmer and you've always wanted to learn rendering, but you just don't know where to start. Go and hit up Cookie, and again, I'll put a link in for you, but go and check out his training days, guys, because would you rather learn in a college environment, you know, putting a bit of render over a concrete block, or would you want to learn from a seasoned renderer that does this day in and day out, renders houses day in and day out? He knows the shortcuts. He knows, you know, how to get over problems, how to get over things that go wrong. So I know who I'd rather learn from. I'd rather learn from a seasoned plasterer that relies on these skills to pay his mortgage and to feed his family. You'll learn so much in college, but there's nothing like learning from a professional. And this is why we always encourage Trowel Talk members to try and buddy up with a plasterer when they're learning. Try and get behind a plasterer and shadow the plasterer or the renderer, because you'll learn so much more being in the company of an experienced plasterer that's been in this game for decades than you will in a college environment or learning off a YouTube video or something like that. So listen, if you want to learn rendering, talk to Joel Cook. He'll point you in the right direction. I'm sure he's got an affordable program for you. If you can't afford the full training, he'll have something there, or even some free content where you can go and check out some of his training days and stuff like that. So be sure to do that, guys, definitely. But yeah, any final thoughts, lads, in the chat? Let me just check the comments here. Joel says the prices are going up. $299. I mean, mate, what's that? That's a pair of trainers now, isn't it? $299. £2.99 is doing it for, lads. I'm only joking. $299. So for 300 quid, which is what? That's a good day rate for a spread, isn't it? 300 quid. So for a good day's pay, you can go and learn a brand new skill for 2025. No brainer. Value for money, 100% is value for money, Joel. When you think about what you can do, if you can walk away from that training, and this is what I say to lads that want to join the coaching group, if you can walk away from the training and it's enhanced your skill set and opened up doors and windows for you to go, windows of opportunity, if it does that for like a little amount of money, is it worth doing it? You're going to walk away now and be able to increase your day rate. Or when a customer inquires and says, can you render our garage? And now you know how to do it. It's like, well, yeah, of course it's worth it. So only take a couple of jobs, to get your money back, wouldn't it? I'm probably going to answer a lot of these comments when I come off the live, because I say it's 9 a.m. and I've promised a quick chat with Joel, and there's a lot of them. Cookie says he's in manager mode, trying to minimize costs as much as he can. Rich books and mentoring groups really helped me a lot over this year to improve how my business works and dealing with stressful situations. Brilliant. Cheers, Rich. Nice one. Matt Neeson, there's so much help available through this group and Joel's group. It's great seeing people helping others instead of trying to tear them down. 100%, mate. And you're a key component in that, Mark, and it's always appreciated. It doesn't go unnoticed what you do for these communities, Mark. It doesn't go unnoticed. And I know we do name drop you a lot and reference you a lot, but I'm not here to blow smoke up your ass, but I just want to say thank you again on behalf of me, Joel, everybody, because the amount of value you pour into these community groups, it's unreal, mate. And the passion you've got for the game is unreal. So we need more Mark Neesons on these groups, guys. So any young Mark Neesons out there hungry for it, get involved a bit more. The young lads, get involved and learn off people like Mark as well. Rich says that he's looking to move more into the specialist role. Wants to tap the insulation, internal and external. He's done the Weber's EWI training. There's an internal wall insulation intensive training course that's going to be released. I was hoping to get it out before Christmas, and I'm still going to try and hit that target. It's not quite finished yet, but it might mean that it gets released January 2025. But as soon as that's available, I'll be splattering it all over the Trowel Talk community group and YouTube channel and coaching group and everywhere else. But in a nutshell, the key focus is going to be on case studies in old properties. We're going to be unpacking the 4 types of damp and sort of running through why these old homes get damp, how to resolve it, because we all know that in the damp industry there's a lot of cover-ups going on. Slap some sand and cement with waterproofer over it and skim it, but let's not put any focus on where the actual damp's coming from. And none of us like that approach. And the damp industry, it's got a bad name, hasn't it? It gets a bad rap. And, you know, the line brigade are always jumping all over damp proofers and giving them a hard time, giving them a good kicking. Some of them deserve it. Some of them are trying to put food on the table. But a lot of it is just to do with the lack of education on old buildings, you know, and understanding how they work and, you know, what is bridging. You know, let's look at the ground levels. You know, let's understand penetrating damp. Let's look at the obvious stuff like leaky downpipes and gaskets gone in the windows. And, you know, is there enough overhang on the roof outside? Let's look at the obvious stuff before we start just slapping sand and cement with waterproofer over everything and charging ridiculous money for doing it. But on these old houses, guys, they're sucking heat out of the rooms by 35% on a solid wall. So sand and cement, it just isn't going to cut it these days. We need to try and keep the heat in. And this is why cork sole is big at the minute, because it's a thin option for customers. You know, you don't need to take your skirting boards off. You don't need to take your windowsills off. You know, you're talking like 6 millimeters of material straight over the top. So it has got its place inside and it's getting positive. I mean, Ian off the coaching group, listen, Ian joined my coaching group, okay, with absolutely no technical skills whatsoever when it comes to computers, websites, marketing. He didn't know where to start, and he's gone from being in that position to building, publishing and ranking a completely free organic website, getting leads through that website for cork sole, and he's just bagged his job last week, just finished his job, cork sole project, spraying internally and then skimming. Made serious money on it, so he's made some good money on it, and he's just got a 5-star review dropped in that he's shared into the coaching group. And the customer said in this review, guys, I can already feel the temperature difference. So it's not bollocks. And I know there's still a bit of skepticism on the whole cork thing. Oh, how can it do that? So being so thin. Listen, it's not going to compare to like a 72.5 mil PIR board, like, you know, the Celotex PL 4000 or the Speedline or something like that. It's not going to compare to a big chunky PIR board. But, you know, for the space, not everybody can afford PIR. Not everybody wants to lose the floor space and rip out skirting boards, window boards, you know, ripping built-in wardrobes out, etc., or moving radiators. So it's an option where plasterers can come in and not have to get involved too much with the carpentry and the ripping outside. And they oftentimes, you can go over the top. So that's why these TWE systems are going to be blowing up over the next few years. So listen, if you do want to increase your skill set moving into 2025, have a look at this internal wall insulation training course that I'm going to be releasing, because I'm going to be covering cork sole, XPS, wood fiber insulation and breathable systems, okay, PIR, what are the best PIR boards to use, but more importantly, where should you use internal wall insulation and where shouldn't you use it? We'll cover things like cold bridging. We'll cover window reveals. I mean, a post come up yesterday on Trowel Talk. Someone was saying, you know, someone's insulated this cold wall. They've insulated the face, but they've not insulated the reveal. So am I okay just to skim the reveal? And the answer to that is no, because now your reveal's a cold bridge and it's just going to attract, you know, damp and black spot mold because there's no insulation there. So these are the obvious things that we're going to be covering in the IWI training program, just to make sure that if you do start installing these systems, you don't get tripped up using the wrong materials, for example. The last thing you want to do is charge someone 10 grand for a fit out, and 6 months later go being back there ripping it all out again and having to do it again. So we need to understand why these properties get damp in the first place. You know, we need to understand U values and R values a little bit before we start throwing these insulation boards in. So that's what it's all about. But again, if you're looking to tap a new market, guys, for 2025, the EWI and the IWI markets are red hot, and they will be for decades. There's almost 10 million cold houses, solid wall properties in the UK. And me and Joel can't do them all on our own. So get involved and make some money. listen, I hope that's helped today. And any comments, any final thoughts, drop into the comments, and I'll catch up with you later. I'm going to go and have a chat with Cookie now. Have a good weekend, everybody, and I'll catch you all later.